Welcome to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. Talk radio to inspire, inform, and stimulate. Bringing you enlightened discussions with authors, creatives, innovative business and health professionals, and ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Sharing their expertise and life stories. Making a difference, one word at a time. Now here's your host, Vicki St. Clair.
And welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Well, if it seems that you have more to do every day and less time for yourself, you're not alone. My guests today have certainly experienced this themselves. And we have a little change in programming here. So for those that had written to me and were expecting Gemma Hartley, she's quite ill and couldn't join us today. So I just wanted to get that out the way up front. But we are going to talk today, or you're going to hear from two experts on this subject. The first, coming up second, I have Brian Robinson. He's a psychotherapist, and he's written a great new book called #Chill. Turn off your job and turn on your life. And he is a former workaholic, recovering workaholic. And I think it's still somewhat of a battle for him, as it is with most people who are in recovery. But this is a really great book for anybody who works too much from choice. We're not all working because we have to. Some people just can't stop themselves. And he goes into why it's not helpful for us to be that way. And certainly having experienced himself, it comes from a place of expertise and personal experience. Coming up first, we're going to talk with somebody who found herself in a situation where she's totally been in charge of her life. She was a lawyer, she's a law professor, and suddenly with two young children, she found herself feeling totally overwhelmed, a feeling that surprised her, and she couldn't understand why she was feeling so overwhelmed by everything she had to do. But eventually, she sat down and started to look at what was going on in her life. And when she analyzed what was going on, she realized she was being consumed by what she calls invisible labor. And every day, that unseen form of labor creeps into everyone's lives, literally stealing precious moments of our free time. It strains our schedules, it strains our relationships. And what's worth our efforts in completing this invisible labor often earn no appreciation and no compensation. And so that's why she calls it life admin. It's something all of us have to do. And appropriately enough, that's the name of her new book, Life Admin. So let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. She is the Isidore and Seville Sulzbacher Professor of Law at Columbia. That's such a mouthful. But we sat down to talk about how we identify this drain on our lives and what it looks like and what we can do about it. And we began, she begins her book saying that this is the book I thought I didn't have time to write. It's also the book you think you don't have time to read. And one of the things I love about it is that she's taken out some of the best ideas in the book and put them in list format at the back of the book. So if you really don't have time to read it, the list is there at the back. But she conducted dozens of people, interviews and focus groups to gather favorite tips and tricks. It would help if I could speak today. And we begin our conversation talking about how technology has created much more self-service work that falls on us to do. Yes, it can be convenient, but it's also given us a lot more to do, not just at work, but at home too. Here is Elizabeth Emmons with Life Admin.
For most people, technology has made things harder. Technology does offer some advantages, and so I talk about some of those in the book. But for most of us, it has really added to the ways that this labor can reach us somewhat constantly. And the expectations for our ability to respond mean that we've all been kind of given our own personal admin jobs in these devices that we carry around that make demands on us.
Right, right. So in our first segment, we talked with somebody else about emotional labor, the invisible cost of emotional labor. What is the invisible cost to us of all this life admin we have to do on top of that?
It takes our time. first off, and it takes our energy. And it fills our minds, and in that way takes away our ease, our ability to get into the flow of what we're doing, our relationships or our work or our hobbies, if we have time for hobbies. It really is a huge drain, and it sounds trivial, all these little things, you know, who calls the exterminator or bill paying or taxes, but it really adds up. I mean, if you think about the free application for federal student aid, you know, for the college students or people applying for college apply for financial aid or often their parents, the FAFSA form cost U.S. families 30 million hours last year, and they're huge costs to people not refinancing their mortgages to the tune of $5.4 billion in foregone savings, often because people just fail to open the mail. Or make that first call. And I think that there are big financial costs to this as well as time costs.
Yes, I remember this was several years ago. I interviewed somebody from MSNBC who specializes in just consumer bills and said that the average person, and this was back then, pays over $3,000 in hidden costs that they do not need to pay if they bother to open their statement and read it and check it. So it's really shocking, and that's per year.
And yet, who has the time to do
really?
Right? And one of the problems, I think, and this is where the fact that I'm a law professor, in addition to being a parent, comes in, is that I do think there are changes that we need at the level of law and markets and society, and not just in our individual lives. And one of them is that companies should compensate us when they waste our time. And right now, courts largely dismiss those kinds of claims if you want damages for lost personal time, because, say, the airline loses your luggage and you eventually get it back, say, or you get financial compensation for your luggage, but not for the hours you spent battling with them and on their portal and calling them up and in their phone tree trying to get the luggage back.
Yeah, yeah. You talk in the book about how admin can wreck your life, and there's no doubt that it can. I've certainly had my belly full of it last year, but you specifically talk about admin of poverty and how that is extremely, it just causes more hardship for people who are already in a difficult situation.
Absolutely. You know, the stakes of poverty admin are generally higher. You know, I can ignore my snail mail in my hallway for a week or more, but if you're on public benefits, delays in your admin can lead to losing your home. I did a focus group with a poverty-related clinic, and, you know, the young lawyers there talked about how much time they spent helping people try to recover their benefits that they had lost due to minor admin failures that for people who are wealthier wouldn't be such a problem. Another part of it, too, though, is that it's much harder to do the office work of life without an actual office and office equipment, without a copier, you know, and a scanner and all those things you need to do in order to complete this kind of office work.
Would you share with us what your biggest personal challenge was and how over time you managed to fix that? I'm assuming you did fix it, so we'll go with the positive there.
Sure. So one was my to-do list. I had a truly awful way of keeping track of the things I needed to do. I would put them in my phone as a kind of urgent item for tomorrow, just in my calendar, like at 9 a.m. I'll do this. And then I would add items, and then I would put it on repeat because I wouldn't get them done. And then I would have these incredibly long lists on repeat at particular times of the day when I was not, in fact, doing them. And I couldn't adapt it. And anyway, it was really awful. And I spent, as part of this project, a lot of time looking into apps for to-do lists. Some of my interviewees really swear by certain apps, and I talk about some of them in the book. I'm not generally promoting the certain products or any of that. But I found for me that searching for the perfect app was a big time suck, and I did not, for me, find the perfect app. One of the great surprises of my research was finding how many people had gone back to paper lists, paper to-do lists, or the closest thing to that, which is what I use in my phone, which is just a kind of notepad in the phone, which is the closest thing to paper. And then on really busy days, I also make a paper list. And that really has worked well for me. I found that a lot of the super doers I interviewed are using paper lists, which, that was a big surprise.
You talk about the stickiness of admin and the roles that we adopt and we tend to get stuck with in relationships, in family. And you say that admin has a very special stickiness of all of its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yeah, it's a really interesting thing I uncovered. One of my interviewees, woman, told me the story that she and her husband drove cross country about 10 years before I interviewed her, and while one of them would drive and the other one would make calls to set up utilities, and then they'd switch. And she told me that 10 years later they still split up who paid which bills based on who had been driving and who had been calling up to set up the bills 10 years earlier, right? It was that stickiness, right? It tends to stick on whoever starts doing the first instance of that thing. And the reason that I think, any labor could be sticky, but admin is stickier because it depends on information. You need to know things, and often you need to know people. And so that's why it's easier to do the dishes in someone else's house than to make their grocery list. So dishes are a traditional chore, but making a grocery list is the admin part of going grocery shopping. And so once we know about stickiness, then we can understand the patterns that have developed, but also we can redirect the patterns if we want to do that. We can have them stick somewhere else if we can decide with our partner or someone else in our family or our life. We want to sort of shift things up a little bit. Admin can also be restuck in that way, and that's a bright spot.
So having talked with all these other people, having done your research, having written the book, what's been the biggest key takeaway for you and the way that you now handle life admin and what changes it's made to your life?
The biggest difference for me comes from visibility. Now that I see it, now that it's real, I can make choices. And some of the time the choice is to do less of it. Some of the time the choice is to turn it into something else, so it's not admin anymore because I make it into a meaningful activity. And some of the time it's to recognize, no, this thing really has to get done. And so now it's time to do it in a way that won't be as painful. And so one of the ways, so just this week, in fact, I had to realize there was some really challenging email and other matters that are admin for me I had to deal with, and I needed to schedule an admin study hall. I talk about this in the book. One of the things that some of my interviewees found to be meaningful was doing admin with other people. Most of us don't have time to meet in person, but you can set it up on video conference or on the phone, and you get together for an hour and you schedule it, and you tell each other what you're planning to do, and then you do it. And then at the end you say, good job, way to go, and it becomes real. And when I feel overwhelmed, I'll do that, or I'll just do it by myself. But I slot aside an hour to actually do it, and then I don't wonder what happened. I don't feel like, oh, I just wasted that time. No, I know I did something important.
Let's just talk about email before we end our conversation, because this has been the bane of my life. I swear I nearly had a nervous breakdown over it last year. You get over 500 emails a day. Some of my colleagues get even more than that. And it becomes overwhelming because you take a couple of days off and you come back and you've got 15, 18, 2,000, 1,800, 2,000 emails in your box. How have you managed that for yourself?
So this is a huge problem for so many people. And I will say this is one area where I think a societal change would really help us. It's not the only answer, but it would really help us. And there are companies that are doing things like when their employees go on vacation, the company actually deletes their emails while they're gone and sends an auto reply that says, if what you were emailing the person about was important, email them when they return. And then you don't come back from your vacation with that overload. But that takes systemic change. At an individual level, I've started to do things like not look at it in my phone at certain times, so at least try to dedicate certain time to when I'm doing it, so I'm not doing it all the time. And I've started to try to write at the end of messages, NNR for no need to reply, so people know that the email thread can end. And they've started in my life people to return that favor so we can make things end sooner, and so the chains at least don't go on and on. So those are a few of the changes, but as you know, I talk about a lot more ideas throughout the book.
And welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. And my guest there was Elizabeth Emmons. She's a lawyer, law professor, and author of Life Admin, How I Learned to Do Less, Do Better, and Live More. And there are some good tips in the back of the book, well, all through the book. But as I said, I really like the fact that she has a list at the back we can jump to for a quick start. So Eric, I'm just curious here because we talked about email, and seriously, I said I almost had a nervous breakdown last year because of email, but it's not far off the truth there. It was driving me insane because I couldn't keep up with it. And the less you can keep up with it, the more you get behind. But it's like, how do you manage to do your work when you're getting that volume of emails and you're just responding to emails? How much do you get here?
Oh, tons and tons,
Yeah.
of course. And you know what I've had to do to kind of just discipline stuff is just if I know that I'm not likely to respond to it, meaning it's not critical, I just delete. And I mean, I read the subject, and that sticks in my head enough that if I go, oh, yeah, I think I saw something about that, then I can go and search my email, knowing that it won't be deleted for another 30 days. So even if it's in the trash, I can retrieve it.
Right.
But we get a ton of emails where in-house, too, where folks are like, oh, congratulate so-and-so on their whatever. And then every person in the office responds to that reply all with, hey, congratulations, great job, which is totally cool. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I think anytime somebody succeeds, something like that is nice, But at the same time, I don't need to read every single one of every person responding to,
right.
a reply all email unless it's critical. So I just swap and delete that. And one of the nice things about how email has kind of changed so that now you have conversations rather than just individual emails is that you can swipe out a whole series. I say swipe because I do a lot on my phone, but
right.
You can delete a whole series of emails with one click now, where it used to be you really had to go in and click.
Right, right. Well, I liked her suggestion as well of putting on there, no need to respond.
Yeah, that's great.
And,
I like that.
And going to your point of, everybody jumping on the bandwagon and copying everyone, we call that in the teams I work in typically little r and big R.
Uh-huh.
So if you send a mass email out to everyone and you only want them to reply to you or to a specific person, you just put little r response. And otherwise you get the big R response, right? And you get, I've worked with people, overseas a lot.
Uh-huh.
And so when I get up into my studio, even if I get into my studio at 6 a.m., they're in London and Australia and Africa. So I get in there and it's like a million big responses from everyone. And it's like, okay, this is not a good way to start the day.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that we're finally kind of developing tools to deal with this overwhelm. Because I remember back, this is kind of tipping off how old I am, but I remember back when email first started. I'm that old. But back in the day, it used to be you get like, 3 emails or whatever. And that whole AOL, you've got mail. That actually was like something you kind of look forward to because, who's writing me now? But it's become such, an important tool in business, and of course, in your everyday life and commerce, and you receive so much, spam and stuff that just weeding through all that is a job in itself.
Yeah. And, I was one of the first adopters of email. I couldn't wait to get my computer. But the problem was nobody else had one at that point. And it was in the days of CompuServe. Remember CompuServe?
I do.
And so if I emailed somebody and they didn't respond, I'd get quite upset and think, well, how rude. That's really rude. But now it's like I have to put a disclaimer on my websites, if we don't respond, it's not because we don't love you. We don't have time to respond to everything.
Well, something in your interview there with Elizabeth that really struck me was that talking about some companies that will actually delete email that a person receives while they're on vacation and have a response that says, hey, if this is important, send that email again when the person is back in the office. I thought that's really cool because people, they need to have that vacation time where they're not thinking, where they're not checking their email, where they're not thinking about work. And that's so hard to come by these days. So if you've got a company like that, that's actually thinking about their workers like that, that's pretty cool. Of course, the downside of that, of course, is that a lot of times people don't actually read those auto responses.
That's right.
And they just
right.
assume that the person got the email and they'll get back to it, and not knowing that, hey, your email is gone. It's deleted. So
Yeah, but I think company-wide that's a good idea, and I think companies need to look at it. I don't know if I mentioned this in the interview, but in Europe, certain countries in Europe, it's illegal for employers to email employees after 6 o'clock at night now. It has been for a year or so, which I think is a great idea because, I've often worked with teams maybe up here in Redmond, Portland, and somebody will email at 1 a.m. in the morning and then they email at 3. Did you read my email? It's like, no, I've been sleeping.
right.
And then at 5 a.m. you get another one. I sent you a couple of emails and you haven't responded yet. It's like, yeah, okay, chill.
Well, I mean, I assume that that there's some exceptions for that. Like if there's an internet outage or whatever, they need to send a notification. They can still send that stuff.
Yeah, probably. But I
Yeah.
think it's just, there's a lot of people, you probably see this, but I definitely see it in teams I work with where people are highly visible and they work on very visible projects. And if they do not respond, they take it that you're not on top of the game, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
They're probably doing a really great job, but you can't respond to everything.
People can't be expected to be working 24/7, 365.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked in Elizabeth's book, Life Admin, she talks about Stephen Covey's urgent versus important matrix for people who might be familiar with that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Well, it's kind of, it's old now, but I still kind of work from this premise. Covey's book came out, well over 20 years ago now. But I, to be quite honest, I haven't found anything else that really is better than this. And a lot of time management systems actually are based on his quadrant. But the one thing that I think Elizabeth wanted to point out in her book was that there are 4 quadrants to Stephen Covey's matrix. And if you just imagine a square with 4 little squares inside of it, you've got quadrant 1, which is stuff that's in your face, immediate, people coming up to you, or a crisis situation that you have to respond to immediately. You've also got, in another quadrant, you've got quadrant 2, which is non-urgent stuff, and that's where we need to be spending most of our time. But because we spend, according to studies, people spend most of their time either in quadrant 1, which is the crisis quadrant, in quadrant 3, which is not important, it's just kind of interruptions, emails, calls, meetings, popular activities, or in quadrant 4, which is trivia and busy work, time wasters, vegging out, watching TV. We spend very little time in this quadrant 2, which is all about preparation, building relationships, networking, making connections, training, long-term planning, preventative activities. And I think the best example I had when I was learning this was that if you think of firemen, you think of them out, putting out fires, saving people, saving buildings, saving the environment, putting out these fires in high-risk situations. But that's not where they spend most of their time. They spend most of their time in Q2 in planning, preparing, training, making sure everything's ready. So key thing there. And the other thing with quadrant 2 is that it's a space where we often don't spend time because nobody's making us spend time there. For example, if you want to write a book, but you never do, you're ignoring your quadrant 2 area. But there are some very good tips in here, and it's well worth looking at. And I actually have 2 of these copies, so I'm going to give away 2 of these books today. So if you think you'd like to have a copy of Elizabeth Emmons' book, you can ring my 800 number. You'll be able to get through because it's on voicemail, so it'll take multiple calls at the same time. And the book is called Life Admin, How I Learned to Do Less, Do Better, and Live More by Elizabeth Emmons. And if you'd like a copy of that, what we'll do is you can call us today, Monday, on the live show, and you can leave your name and your telephone number and say you're calling about the book. And then at 5 o'clock today, I'll grab the names off voicemail and I'll do a drawing. And the first 2 people I pull out will be winners of this book. Okay? So the number, and let's not forget to give the number, 1-800-495-7617. 1-800-495-7617. And you have until 5 o'clock tonight to leave a voicemail at that number if you'd like a copy of Elizabeth Emmons' Life Admin book. 1-800-495-7617. All right, I think we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. You're listening to Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair.
Be happy when you've gone so far away. Just send me an email that says I love you. Send me an email that says I love
you. Parkinson's disease affects as many as 1 million people in the United States. At the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, it's our mission to beat this disease. To learn about the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, or if you want to help support our work, visit our website, pdf.org, or call us at 800-457-6676. In the Northwest, contact the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation at nwpf.org.
Next week on Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair, coping with the suicide of a loved one is arguably the hardest thing we can face. You search for signs you missed, cope with the changes in your own life, and try to come to terms with questions you may never have the answer to. In The Dark Eclipse, Reflections on Suicide and Absence, author A.W. Barnes explores his own journey to recovery in the quest to also help others who've lost loved ones. Tune in Mondays at noon Pacific Time and Fridays at 6 a.m. and catch up on podcasts at conversationslive.net.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cooper, and every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m., I'll be hosting Lost and Found. We'll be discussing all types of losses, but it's not going to be the doom and gloom hour. It'll be an hour of education, support, validation, and yes, we will have a little bit of humor. So won't you join me Wednesdays, 1 to 2 p.m., Lost and Found, because every loss matters, and through every loss, something can be found.
Radio is very competitive. Shows soar in popularity and then flame out. Sometimes, however, a real connection is made with an audience, and success blooms year after year. For over a decade, Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair has built a loyal following thanks to inspiring and stimulating conversation. Longevity, loyalty, exclusivity. Smart advertisers seek it out. With Vicky's valuable audience, the search is over. Discover the affordable, effective ways to advertise your business. Log on to conversationslive.net. That's conversationslive.net today.
Talk radio for the heart and soul. Alternative Talk 1150.
Send me an email that says I love you. Send me an email that says I love you.
And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. You are listening to Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair. And coming up next, we're going to hear from Dr. Brian Robinson. I sat down with him last week and had a conversation about his new book that's coming out, or is out, excuse me. It's called #Chill, Turn Off Your Job and Turn On Your Life. And this is you might describe it as a guided mindfulness and meditation book. And I like it because it's broken down into months. It tells you what you can do each month. It's broken down into very small chunks. So if you just need a little boost and you're thinking, I need a little encouragement here, this is a great book for it. And at the back of the book, as Brian will tell you, he has 365 meditations. You can just pull out one a day and get on with it, right? So let me tell you a little bit about Brian. He's a licensed psychotherapist and professor emeritus at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He currently has a blog on Psychology Today called The Right Mindset, and he's been interviewed by Forbes, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, among countless other magazines. His prior books have been published in 13 different languages. And if you go to his website, brianrobinsonbooks.com, it's absolutely chock full of resources up there. And I'm going to bring on the conversation right now. As I said at the top of the hour, he's a recovering workaholic. Let me get that straight. And the book is called the #Chill, Turn Off Your Job and Turn On Your Life. Brian Robinson. So, Brian, I want to share your backstory because you have not just clinical experience with workaholics, perfectionists, overachievers, but you also describe yourself as a working or a recovering workaholic. And it goes way back for you because you began your book by telling us that in elementary school, the period you most hated was recess, and that if a teacher forgot to assign you homework over Christmas vacation, you'd be the squealer who reminded her. So what was going on?
And I got beat up after school.
I can imagine.
Well, you know, what that really represents is growing up in a dysfunctional family in a sea of chaos. What I know now in retrospect is I was grabbing on to whatever I could to get a sense of control. So actually I started writing when I was 7. I would make up these mystery stories and get these little kids into trouble and then get them out of trouble, and it gave me an immense sense of control in an environment that was topsy-turvy. So I ended up, as I grew, I had no idea what was going on, and everybody was giving me accolades and slaps on the back. And I wrote the church Christmas play when I was in high school. I directed it. I built the sets. I acted in one of the lead roles of Joseph, and everybody thought that was great. Underneath what was going on was a terrorized little boy because of the unpredictability of what he was coming home to, and a need to try to control what was going on around him, which is impossible. And I've studied workaholics for many, many years. It is a communion between my personal and professional life, because when I was back in the 80s, when we were talking about every addiction under the sun except workaholism, and I knew I had been through it, I wrote one of the first books showing that it's very similar to alcoholism. It's a way of medicating anxiety, of medicating not feeling good enough. The problem with it is there's never enough. It's like the alcoholic can't get enough alcohol, and the work addict can never get to the place where they feel like that it's enough. So there's constant doing. There's, in my situation, when my family would go, say, to the shore in South Carolina, to the beach, I would sneak work into my clothes because my family would interrogate me to make sure I was going to rest and not carry work with me. And ultimately what would happen is everybody would go for a walk on the beach, and I would pretend I was going to sleep. And I would sneak out my work and work on a project while they were relaxing and enjoying the beach, which sounds really sick to me right now because I was sick.
Right. But at what point did it change for you? Because you continued this through your adult life. Your husband complained about you being controlling, inflexible, that you couldn't relax.
Right.
So what was the actual turning point for you, Brian, and how did that change things?
Well, there were several things. My spouse and I were breaking up. I was having gastrointestinal problems from the stress. I was snapping at colleagues. And finally, my spouse went into recovery for alcoholism, and I went along to support him and found out from some of the people there in the family program that I had an illness just as severe as what he was going through, which was kind of like a smack in the face. And I ended up joining Workaholics Anonymous, which has a 12-step program similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what really pulled me out of that work pit was yoga and mindful meditation. And I grew up in a Baptist fundamentalist home, and now I would call myself Buddhist because to me that really resonates in terms of who I am in the world.
Right, and you start your book with going back to the Buddhist, the right mind, the beginner's mind. But let's talk first of all about the title of the book, Chill, #Chill.
Right.
What do you mean by chill? You don't mean, hey, go find a hobby or quit your job and go be a beach bum.
Not at all.
It's all about perspective.
It's not going from one extreme to the other. It's actually bringing more balance into our lives. #chill does include having a hobby and hanging out by the pool and kicking back and watching the game. Those are great things to do. Massage, of course, but really it goes much deeper. #chill is a place inside of us where we can reside if we're willing to step back and take a look at our internal lives and external lives. And there are 8 C words that I associate with that place, because when I'm able to be there, I'm calmer, I have more clarity, I have more compassion for myself and the people around me. And there are other C words that I can list that kind of spiral once you get into that place, but it's about being in the present moment instead of regretting the past, worried about the future. That's in our thinking mind. But when you meditate or when you become mindful, whether it's open awareness or focusing on your breath, whatever form of meditation you do, it puts you in the present moment where life is really occurring. It also has incredible physiological benefits because it slows down your heart rate and your respiratory rate and loosens your muscles. It provides, we know now from the MRIs we can see of the brain, that people who meditate over a period of time, they have less shrinkage of the hippocampus, which explains memory. A lot of people as they get older have problems remembering, short-term memory especially, but people who meditate on a regular basis, they don't have that, and we can see it in the brain.
Oh, that's
there are
interesting.
other benefits in addition to that, like a
Right.
better immune system and so forth.
Right, right. And I like the analogy you use of a chill person. You say a chill person is able to use their gas and their brakes in an integrated way, so they can still get things accomplished, but in a clear and confident and competent way.
Some of us treat our cars better than we treat our bodies.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes. And the analogy is really about we are wired for both gas and brakes. But in this day and time, more people are neglecting the brakes, B-R-A-K-E-S, and they're pushing the pedal to the metal, and they're burning out. And that's what would happen to a car if you drive at 90 miles an hour without brakes. So the whole idea of work-life balance is bringing the brakes, and that's what chill is, to your life. It's not about just chilling out and not being effective. In fact, the research shows the opposite. There's so much research coming out now that's countering the old beliefs that we used to have about work. What we know is if you slow down and if you focus on one thing at a time instead of multitasking, and the research shows that you are more effective, you're happier as you go along, and the quality of the output is superior to what it would normally be.
Right.
So it's really living life in reverse in a way of what we are being told.
Something that seemed very key, and you talk about this in the book, you also blogged on it on Psychology Today, in your blog, The Right Mindset. You talk about the importance of cultivating a growth mindset, and you write, with a growth mindset, you think of success and rejection as a package deal. So why is that so important when we're learning to chill but still want to be successful?
Well, because when we, in quotation marks, fail, or if we get rejection, we react, and we see that as the end. And that reaction takes us out of the chill, and it really works against us, our motivation and our ability to get back in the saddle. But when we realize you can't have an up without a down, you can't have a right without a left, and you can't have a top without a bottom. Everything comes in bookends. So I can name tons of people that everybody listening will know. Meryl Streep, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams. These are all people at the top of their game. They're all talented in their own way, but they did not get there by sheer talent. They get there because they fail, and they take the towel they want to throw in and wipe the brow and get back in the game. So failure is part of success. You can't have success without it. The key is, what do we do with it? That's the key.
Right.
Instead of, do I give up or do I get back in the saddle? you haven't failed till you give up.
Right, right. You write about great work, which you say is so much more than earning promotions, fat paychecks, meeting deadlines. It's about toiling with greatness. What does that mean?
Toiling with greatness is the way in which we navigate the obstacles, the stress, the roadblocks, and the disappointments. Of course, it's important to have a quality outcome, but the other piece of that is great work is not just what you produce, it's how you treat people along the way and how you treat yourself with self-compassion and self-respect and the people around you, being a team player, listening to other ideas instead of steamrolling through. Workaholics tend to not be team players, and they tend to cover up their mistakes instead of admitting them. So it's really about how you're working with others, how you're respecting the judge and the janitor equally. It's the process you go through on the way to the outcome.
Right, right. And I now have to let you go in a minute, but I just want to touch on this because this hit home with me. You say better to think about being drawn than being driven. Would you explain that?
Sure. Well, many of us are driven, and we never stop to think about it. But if you take a breath and step back and look at your life from a bird's eye view, you can look and ask yourself, am I doing what I'm doing because of external circumstances or because of self-imposed pressure, or am I living my truth? And being drawn is when you look in your heart and your soul. You can still be productive. This is not about leaving your job or not being productive. It's, again, the way in which you deal with what's coming your way. And so when you're drawn, you're coming from the inside out. When you're driven, you're coming from the outside in, and you're a slave to deadlines and pressures and what people want, pleasing people. And you give up yourself when that happens. But when you're drawn, you're going to be happier, and again, you're going to be slower, and you're going to be more effective and more productive in the end.
Yeah, lovely. Love it. Well, the book is a mindfulness and meditation guidebook. It's broken down into months, which I love. And at the end of the book, you also share meditations that we can.
The way they are medicated.
They are medicated. Yes, yeah, they do medicate you.
There's 366 chillers at the end, one for each day of the year. They're just one-liners you can file away and carry with you during the day. And I wanted to say one more thing, Vicki. My website has a test called How Chill Are You? Folks can go on the website, take the test. It'll give you an immediate electronic score. And some of my blogs from Psych Today are on there. It's all free. And my website is www.brianrobinsonbooks.com. And that's BRYAN books.com.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vicki.
And again, that was Dr. Brian Robinson, his book, #Chill, Turn Off Your Job and Turn On Your Life. The website, as I said earlier, is packed full of resources. So, you know, if you're interested in this topic at all, I'd recommend you go there, brianrobinsonbooks.com, and check it out. He's written extensively on workaholism and other issues. And I have a copy of this book as well that I'm going to give away today. If you'd like a copy of this, we'll do the same thing we did with the Life Admin book. You can call my 1-800 number, leave your name and your number so I can get back to you if you're a winner. And just call in and leave a message saying you're calling about the book. And at 5 o'clock, after 5 o'clock today, I'll do a drawing of all the names that have called in to receive a copy of the book, and I will get in touch with the winner. Okay? So the book again is The book is #chill, #chill. So that's all you need to remember, okay, for this. And then my number, my 800 number is 1-800-495-7617, 1-800-495-7617. You've got until 5 o'clock. And I'm guessing somebody might have changed their mind or want to enter both. And that's okay. You can enter both because it's a contest, all right? Whoever gets whoever I draw as the winning name, I will call and let know tomorrow. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair.
I just came here to chill. Do something different with your spare time. Give baby animals at Paws a fresh start. With the assistance of caring volunteers, Paws helps hundreds of orphaned and sick kittens and puppies each year. Join us and save lives. Become a Paws foster care volunteer. For more information, visit paws.org or 425-787-2500. paws.org or 425-787-2500.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is gonna help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
Next week on Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair, coping with the suicide of a loved one is arguably the hardest thing we can face. You search for signs you missed, cope with the changes in your own life, and try to come to terms with questions you may never have the answer to. In the Dark Eclipse, Reflections on Suicide and Absence, author A.W. Barnes explores his own journey to recovery in the quest to also help others who've lost loved ones. Tune in Mondays at noon Pacific Time and Fridays at 6 a.m. and catch up on podcasts at conversationslive.net.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to the Northwest School of Animal Massage, we cover the world of animals. This week, January 20th, it's Behavior Training and Healing Sunday with me. As an animal behavior therapist and trainer, I can help you understand your animal friends and solve any problems you're having. So plan to give me a call with your questions or about any animal-related topic you'd like to chat about. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Are you ready for something real, raw, upfront, and honest? Then tune in each Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here for Love from the Hip. I am spiritual hypnotherapist, master esthetician, and the host, Sakura Sutter. This show is unlike anything you have ever heard and was created to help others to help themselves. Hear me follow up with guests I have hypnotized and see how it has improved their lives. I will also spotlight amazing people from around the world. There's skin tips, live readings, and answers to life's burning questions. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m.
At Sundown Communications, we find that most of our clients are brilliant at what they do, but they lack the time and resources to write and create business messaging that delivers results. That's where we come in, providing a diverse range of professional copywriting services for fresh strategic web content, PR, advertising and promotion, marketing, speeches, and much more. Call us today so you can focus on what you do best, and we'll do the rest. Call 800-495-7617. That's 800-495-7617.
Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. Listeners trust the show, and advertisers love the audience. Learn more at conversationslive.net.
Alternative Talk 1150.
You're trying to calm me down with that music, Eric.
That's right.
It's been a crazy kind of day today.
Well, that's the theme song, I think, for hashtag chill.
Oh, okay.
Just came here to chill.
There you go. Hashtag chill. And just real quick, we're giving away 3 books today. 2 copies of Life Admin by Elizabeth Emmons, my first segment today. How I Learned to Do Less, Do Better, and Live More. And hashtag chill, turn off your job and turn on your life by Dr. Brian Robinson. And if you'd like either of those books, you can call my 1-800 number and leave your name and your telephone number so I can call back the winner. And at the end of the day, today, Monday, on the live show, I will pull those names at 5 o'clock, and I'll give you a call tomorrow. If you won, we'll just do a drawing. And the number to call is 1-800-495-7617, 1-800-495-7617. All right. So, Eric, we have not talked. We're halfway through the month already. Can you believe it?
Hard to believe, yeah. It's already January 14th, and Boy, the year's already flying by.
Well, according to statistics, 80-90% of people have already given up on their New Year's resolutions. So how are you doing, my friend? Did you set anything this year?
I did. These are old resolutions, so obviously I haven't had huge success with them in the past. But one resolution I make every year, and I start off well and then kind of find myself slipping, is I'm trying to eat slower, enjoy my meals a little bit, linger over them a little bit more, to enjoy them more. I have a tendency to just kind of, like, when I have food that I like, just stuff it in. And, that's not a really good way to savor your food or your life. And so I'm trying to change that. And I've had some success with that. And then the other thing I'm trying to do, of course, is lose a little weight. And I've had a little bit of success with that as well. I've lost about 10 pounds over the last 2 months. And, not huge gains, but
huge losses.
Every little bit, every little bit helps.
Well, good. Very good. You don't come from a large family.
Well, it's, our generation is not all that large, but the generation previous was huge. So
I ask that because my mother had this theory about, we have people in our family that that married into our family at various spots, and they came from large families. I'm talking 6 and 7 kids, and they all eat so quickly. So my mom had this theory. It's like, okay, well, when the food was laid out, they probably just had to dive into it quick before it disappeared.
And I probably got some of that built into my DNA because my mother had 8 siblings. So, yeah.
Well, I was just looking for a picture I'd put on Twitter. It said, my goal in 2019, I didn't write this. This is somebody else did this. My goal in 2019 is to accomplish the goals I set in 2018, which I should have done in 2017 because I made a promise in 2016, which I planned in 2015.
I can relate. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I got some of that going on too. But
how about you? Did you make resolutions this year?
I did. Well, no, I do. I set goals, but I just want to be more. I try to be mindful as much as possible. I want to be more mindful. And the thing I really want to be mindful about is managing my energy and looking at where it's not about time, it's energy. So where is my energy going? Who is it being spent on? Is it being frittered away? That's what I'm focused on.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. And I think definitely the books we talked about today will help. So it's all good stuff. All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. We've got to fly now, so we will see you next week. Until then, live well, live strong. Thanks for being with us.
Radio is very competitive. Shows soar in popularity and then flame out. Sometimes, however, a real connection is made with an audience, and success blooms year after year. For over a decade, Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair has built a loyal following thanks to inspiring and stimulating conversation. Longevity, loyalty, exclusivity. Smart advertisers seek it out. With Vicki's valuable audience, the search is over. Discover the affordable, effective ways to advertise your business. Log on to conversationslive.net. That's conversationslive.net today.
Let's see if I guess that this just isn't working.
Knowing you have a great idea for a book is one thing, writing it another. So what's stopping you? Maybe you can't find time. Maybe you don't know where to begin. Maybe you wrote a couple of chapters, then disappeared down a rabbit hole. Or maybe you'd rather someone else write it for you. Partnering with the right coach or ghostwriter can make all the difference between talking about your book and finishing your book. As an award-winning writer and strategic consultant, Vicki St. Clair's storytelling credits span from business, health, self-help, and memoir to New York Times and USA Today best-selling anthologies. Vicki partners with people just like you at the exact level you need, whether you need a little encouragement, editorial guidance, or full-blown ghostwriting and consulting services. If you're serious about telling the story you know is inside you, stop procrastinating. Let's get your story down on paper. Contact Vicki today. Email Vicki at VickiSt.Clair.com or call 1-800-495-7617. See more about Vicki and her work at VickiSt.Clair.com.
Yeah, that could work.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers. Contests are the responsibility of the host of this program and not KKNW. This is Alternative Talk 1150 AM, KKNW Seattle, and KNUC 98.9 HD3 Seattle.
Well, good afternoon. Eric Ryder here with you on Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Time now for a quick look at our traffic as we approach 1 o'clock. Southbound I-5 struggles from around Roanoke right on down to about Yesler and 405, finding some congestion around Northeast 44th. Make sure you stay tuned to Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Our brand new show called Method Meets Magic is coming up in the next hour. If you want to learn more about the show, do yourself and learn more about all of our shows. Do yourself a favor, visit 1150kknw.com. We've got listings for all our programs and descriptions what they're all about. So again, stay tuned for Method Meets Magic. Right now, 48 degrees, sunny skies, beautiful Puget Sound area. Thanks for being a listener.
Historic shutdown. Air travel problems. I'm Mike Moss. The partial government shutdown now in its 24th day is the longest in U.S. history, and the president says he will not declare a national emergency.
Facing some pushback within his own party, the president telling reporters he's not inclined to take the drastic step to find money for his border wall elsewhere.
I'm not looking to call a national emergency. This is so simple, you shouldn't have to.
That would prompt a court challenge, perhaps with a delay of months, if not years. The president also not on board, with Senator Lindsey Graham's suggesting he allow government to reopen for 3 weeks or so, which might make Democrats more flexible on border security money.
Well, that was a suggestion that Lindsey made, but I did reject it, yes. I'm not interested. I want to get it solved. I don't want to just delay it. I want to get it solved.
Bob Costantini, the White House.
More airports are having to reduce the number of operating security checkpoints because of staffing shortages caused by unpaid TSA workers calling in sick over the government shutdown. Correspondent Renee Marsh.
Houston and Miami, these are two major hubs. They handle a high volume of passengers, and hundreds of TSA officers have been calling out sick during this partial government shutdown, some of them because they just can't afford to get to work anymore. Others because they are looking for cash-paying jobs because they are working without getting a paycheck.
Airports in New York and Washington are also reporting security is getting harder to provide because of the staff shortages. President Trump today is responding to a New York Times report that the FBI opened an investigation into his